Hi, good evening, everybody, and welcome. We are in a new series tonight. I'm Reverend Sherri James. I'm the Senior Minister for Understanding Principles for Better Living Church in Inglewood, California. And if you are ever in the Inglewood area, we would love for you to join us. Our services are every Sunday at 1 p.m. at 600 West Queen Street in Inglewood, California. And we have an absolute blast. It's a beautiful, loving family, and we would love to have you be a part of it. I am excited because we've got a new series starting tonight. We're working with a text that I have loved for a number of years, and I use it often as a reference, and I am using it now as the primary text for this class, and it is "What Are You?" which is Imelda Octavia Shanklin. Imelda Octavia Shanklin. Here's the good news. The good news is that it's actually possible to get a free copy of this text. So what you'll want to do is you can go to truthunity.net, and under books, you'll be able to find this book. It's a free PDF download, and so you can get a copy of it and work right alongside it. So this is a 9-part series that we're doing. I'm very excited. We're starting tonight, and we're going to be talking about your identity, recognizing your divine nature. So very, very excited about that. Very excited to have this discussion with you. And this came about because we finished the last series, and a lot of the conversation centered around your divine nature, and people wanting to understand who they are and as a divine being. And so these next 9 weeks together are going to be a deep dive into your divine nature. And you can think of them as steps. So tonight we're going to talk about step 1, which is recognizing your divine nature. Let me get to my handout. So this is my intent for this series for you. I want you to live the life that Spirit intended for you. I want you to claim your spiritual inheritance. I want you to develop the spiritual poise that comes with knowing what you are. And I want to help you remove the mental and emotional blocks to your full self-expression. So what success looks like is that at the end of this series, more than you are now, you are living the life that Spirit intended. You are actively claiming your spiritual inheritance. You have developed and continue to develop the spiritual poise that comes with knowing what you are. And you have removed some of the mental and emotional blocks to your full self-expression. We're going to go every Thursday all the way to November 12th. This is a 9-week series we've got together. And here's our schedule for tonight. I've got a couple of announcements, got an opening prayer. We're going to start the conversation with why spiritual identity matters. What are you? We're going to look at what is your spiritual identity. What are you spiritually? And then we're going to talk about the who versus the what. And then we'll look at how to recognize your divine nature. And we'll talk about the 5 things you must know in order to recognize your divine nature. If you want to follow along on the blog, I always write a companion piece to match whatever it is that we are studying on Thursday nights. And so today's blog post focuses on step 1. So much of the things that we cover in the blog post, we cover live also in the class. Teleseminar, oh my God, so Prosper. Anyway, it's coming. I promise it's coming. I can't say any more. Because one more hiccup and I think I might scream. Anyway, be on the newsletter and you'll definitely be in the loop of when the class is offered. Our platform is Webinar Jam. If you are watching this for the first time, meaning you found me on YouTube or through some other outlet, if you want to know when future live classes are happening, you want to make sure that you join my newsletter at revsherri.com to stay in the loop and receive the link to join us each week for the live session. The scriptures for this 9-part series, there were several, and I narrowed it down to these 2. The first is John 10:34. Is it not written in your law? I said, you are God's. And this is Jesus speaking. Is it not written in your law? I said, you are God's. And then one of my favorite verses, Genesis 1:26. Let us make humankind in our image according to our likeness, and let them have dominion. Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion. Just rest with that as we move into our opening prayer. Father, Mother God, we come to you right now, open, receptive, and willing to accept our divinity. I ask that you move away the limitations, move away the mental blocks that keep us from believing fully in who you have created us to be. Help us to truly, truly, truly identify with the divine part of ourselves and to subjugate the human self under the spiritual self. There is purpose for our body, we know that, but we know that first and primary is spirit. And we come together in this format to exalt spirit. I thank you for this platform. I thank you for everyone in this conversation. And I just ask that right here, right now, that all the dreams collectively that we share be made manifest as we truly learn to be who we were created to be. And I release this prayer in the name and through the power that is in the name of Jesus. It is so, and so it is. And amen. So, why spiritual identity matters. This card you're going to see in every conversation that we have over the next 9 weeks together. Why spiritual identity matters. The reason that it matters is that you are spirit. You are spirit. You are a soul that has forgotten its divine identity, a soul now struggling to remember in the midst of time and in the confusions of experiences that you are the living Son of the living God. I think that is so powerful. Your spiritual identity is, I can't begin to impress upon you how important your spiritual identity is. Meaning, whatever I say, you got to like multiply it by an exponential factor, because I'm thinking of a different way to say it. Meaning other than the direction that I was going. Your self-concept is second in importance only to your God concept. What you think about yourself determines what you will even try in life. If your self-concept is timid or fearful or lacks confidence or is full of shame or guilt or despair or embarrassment or whatever, you bring all of that into every conversation that you are a part of. And it informs how you put yourself together. It informs how you dress. You can tell the confidence of a person simply by the way they hold their bodies. And it has to do with how they have identity. You don't know what they have the confidence in. They may have confidence in their looks, or they can have confidence in a lot of things. I am advocating that you have confidence in the fact that you are a spiritual being first. Your spiritual identity is it is important because how you identify yourself determines what you even think is possible for you. And so though you may be able to, meaning you never participated in a sport, or you haven't ever lifted more than 50 pounds, you have the capacity to run a mile in under 4 minutes. It's been done, so it can be done. But if you don't consider yourself that way, you won't even try. I learned something, I talked about Serena a lot the last series, because we were in the middle of the U.S. Open and she was going for her 23rd win or 22nd win, and the young lady that she was getting ready to play, who ultimately defeated her, the woman had already bought her plane ticket. In her mind, she was headed home. She had to change her plane ticket. It never occurred to her that she could win. So, how you come into whatever situation you're coming into, how you see yourself determines what it is that you will do. And good luck for her that Serena was not having her best night, and so she got an opportunity to stay. But many of us count ourselves out and don't get that lucky break. We've simply counted ourselves out. So your spiritual identity is, I can't overstress how important it is. I can't overstress how understanding yourself as the living son of the living God is. And what happens is that you have forgotten who you are, and then you're in the midst of this time-space continuum where it takes time to manifest things, and you've got all of these experiences that look counter to the truth about who you are, and it's confusing. But the truth is that you are the living son of the living God. There's a quote, and I saw it recently, and I fished around and found it, from Oprah Winfrey. This is why spiritual identity matters. And she says this, and I think it's so powerful. My confidence comes from knowing there's a force greater than myself that I'm a part of and is a part of me. Where does your confidence come from? There was a video I was watching, and I really enjoyed it. It was called Born Rich, and it was it was ultimately picked up by HBO, but it was done by one of the sons of the Johnson & Johnson fortune, and I can't call his name right now, but his last name is Johnson. And he was being interviewed on Oprah, and then the film came out on HBO, and it was called Born Rich, and it followed the lives of these young, 20-something children, young adults who had come up in extreme wealth. And he was talking about just, essentially how they see the world, and then needing to create a name or create for themselves independent of their family's wealth. And one of the things that I thought was so interesting was that this is, I'm sure, his perspective, but it could be the perspective of the other young people that were in the film, that his perspective of his life was that anything was possible for him because there was so much money that even in his lifetime he couldn't run out of money. And I remember looking at that film and thinking, his confidence is in the money. His confidence is in the material thing. His confidence is in the family name. Now, that might not sow a negative seed in his life, but the thing is that every seed is true unto itself. So if he holds to that idea, hold on. Constance says, I watched it per your recommendation. It was amazing. It is a good film. Your confidence has to be in spirit. Your confidence has to be in God. You always want your confidence, because where your confidence is where your faith is. And as wonderful as Johnson & Johnson is, Johnson & Johnson's wealth is not permanent. Johnson & Johnson's wealth is transient. It's transitory. It can come and it can go. Guess what? We had the stock in my investment club, and it went up and it went down. And it is very possible for it to go through the floor. It's possible. It doesn't look like it's going to do that. That's why we chose it for the portfolio. But it could do that. Marvin said Gloria Vanderbilt had 2 sons. One jumped to his death. The other one became Anderson Cooper. Yeah, absolutely. Your faith cannot be in your family name. Because that's what your confidence is. That's what faith is. Faith is confident, or confidence is faith, or faith is confidence. You can think of them as like kind of, one explaining the other. And so if your confidence is in a material thing, the problem is that something material, it has an end point because it's in this 3-dimensional world. So, and the identity matters because it is what you identify with. Some of us identify with social groups. Some of us identify with racial groups. Some of us identify with ethnic groups. And the problem with identifying, with calling yourself this thing, is that this thing is material. And that's going to pass away. It's going to pass away. It feels huge now, especially with all the stuff that's going on with the little boy down in Irving, Texas, and the stuff that's happening around the country with the gun violence. It feels enormous. But this is going to pass away. And then what? And then the next thing will come. And will you also move with the next thing? Your identity is, you have to identify with the non-material aspect of yourself, and that is God. That is spirit. Constance says, I believe not only material, but then you limit yourself. You got to say that one more time. I believe not only material, but then you limit yourself. I feel like I misread that, Constance. Correct me if I misunderstood that. So your confidence has to be in something else. Kanisha says, have we started? I'm here. Okay. Hey, everybody. So let me see. Can you see me now? All right. Make sure you guys can see me now. All right. Then this next quote I thought was just fire. This was the last tweet from Maya Angelou, like the day or maybe 2 days before she made her transition. And what she said is, listen to yourself. And in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God. Listen to yourself. And in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God. And I just felt like that was such a beautiful quote, because it is the deepest to you. It is sounding out your name over and over and over again. The Father is always calling to you. Always. Always, always, always. There is no moment in time where the Spirit of God is not calling to you. Constance says, I agree with you that when you place your belief in a sect or a group, you limit yourself. That's it. When you say, I am black, people flipped out because Raven Simone said, don't call me black, don't call me gay. But the thing is that whatever label you take on everything with it. I am spirit first. I'm spirit first and primary. Andrea says, amen to Maya. Ray says, Maya Angelou equals wisdom. Absolutely. Absolutely. When you pick up the label, you pick up everything that comes with the label. So you've got to be mindful of the things that you identify yourself with. And one of the things we'll get into is that often we identify ourselves with the limited sides of our being, and we will fight somebody for that limitation. So what is your spiritual identity? So the first thing is that you are triune in nature. This comes up again and again and again. You are triune in nature, meaning the rule of three. And you are spirit, soul, and body. And she explains this on page 8, and I'm just going to just give it to you right directly from the book. She says that this is how you know that you're triune in nature. First, you say, I feel the assuring presence of a vast good, a something indefinable but infinitely desirable. Kind of like if you've been in a church or some other kind of highly elevated spiritual setting, and there is this feeling of euphoria, and the music is going, and the word is good, and the entire vibe is so overwhelmingly positive. And so you have that you can feel the presence of God. And it's intangible. The only thing you could say is, boy, church was good today. No, that felt good. But sometimes you feel it not even sometimes in a church. Sometimes you feel it when you're in a space and you're watching the performance of an elevated performer. Now, I never got to see Michael Jackson perform live, so I have no idea what that felt like. I wish I'd had that experience. But I remember watching Motown 25. And I even get chilled just thinking about it. And that moment when he moonwalks across the stage, it was like time stood still. It was, I mean, it was all anybody talked about the next day. It was absolutely incredible, right? So that it's when spirit expresses it, you feel it. It's intangible, but it does something to you, and it's amazing. I remember being in a concert, and the artist was just so like just in the zone. And I remember thinking, soak it in, soak it in, soak it in, because this level of excellence is available to you. So it's anytime you're in that exalted state. You've been that way when you've been in a ball game, and you feel that spirit, especially when the team rallies together, and there's this moment of where, you know, they were down and they come back. It's why we like those kinds of events, because it's not so much that it's the player, but it's that the player is channeling the spirit in the form of whatever sport it is that they're playing. It's bringing all of that energy of God to bear in that one moment. And so that's that part of you, that's the spirit part of you, and you feel it. It's why we like those kinds of events. So some people, their church is not church, their church is going to the games. Second, you say, I know, I think, I understand. So these are declarations and evidence that you've got a mental character, that you can perceive information, that you think, that you process information. And third, you say, my body, my circumstances, my life. These phrases show that you recognize a third state of being, and this state is the physical you. So you are triune in nature, that there are three phases to your being. Ray says Michael Jackson projected incredible energy. He sure did. He sure did. I wish other things had been in order, but he sure did. You are the Son of God, but have not always acted the part. And I think that that's important. You are the Son of God, but have not always acted the part. This is where your free choice comes in. You have the choice to act a fool. You got the choice. You have the choice to not believe yourself to be divine. That very much is a choice. You can hear everything that I'm saying here tonight, and you can decide, you know what, I don't agree. I'm just not having it. Ron says, should we not still embrace the form in which our spirit has manifested? Yes, we are a spirit first, but also showed up in a certain way. Why should that be denied? Or are you saying just don't take on the limiting, hold on. Or you're saying just don't take on the limiting aspects of the label, or let the label overshadow the true self. I'm saying the last part. Don't let the label overshadow the true self. Yes, I incarnated in the form of an African-American woman for a purpose. So there's a purpose for me being in this form. But make no mistake, this form is passing. There was a time when there were not people identified with the label African American or black or whatever, right? This label is going to pass. Even this prejudice is going to pass, because the thing about error is that it contains the seed of its own destruction. And if you will simply just get out of its way, it'll kill itself. That's another sermon. So the point is that it is the part that you identify with, because what you identify with determines what you're able to do. What you identify with determines what you're able to do. If you see yourself as this limited being living in a universe where someone could randomly take your life, then that's available to you. Ray says, it was the same, speaking of Michael Jackson, it was the same energy I felt the first time I went to see Tony Robbins. I was sick, however, because the energy in the room was so high, I forgot about being sick because I was able to tune into the vibrations. Yeah, that's it. It can lift you. And when you get in the present, and the thing is that all of us have the ability to do this. You have to simply, this is, you know, we just finished the series on the law, right? We talked about the law of sacrifice. The whole reason you do the law of sacrifice, and meaning that you participate with it, and so you choose what it is you're going to sacrifice for. So I'm going to, let's say my thing is playing the piano, and I'm going to sacrifice other things so that I can become a master at playing the piano. Because what you're doing is that you're creating a platform through which the God presence in you can travel into expression. And so you have to put in that time. that's the only way to get to that place where you can channel that God presence. I remember seeing this guy, and I cannot call his name, and I haven't seen him since. But those of you who follow music would probably know who he is. Young prodigy. He's got to be 30 now, African American guy, and he's a virtuoso pianist. And he came to Sundance, and he played. And it was otherworldly, and I happened to be sitting in like the front row watching him at the piano, and there was this moment where he's like looking up, and his eyes almost look like they roll in the back of his head, and he's playing, and the expression that he had on his face was like, do you guys hear what I'm hearing? And it was as if he was literally downloading what he was hearing in the moment that he was hearing it and pushing it out for us to hear. And it had the feeling of coming so fast that he couldn't play fast enough to get out of him what was inside of him. But you've got to pick where you're going to do your investment. You've got to pick what's your piano, or what's your tennis, or what's your thing. Where are you going to invest your time to become an expert? I'm in the middle of reading Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, and one of the things that he talks about is he wants to demystify how we think about success. And one of the things that he does is he looks at the success of people like Bill Gates and Bill Joy, who founded Sun Microsystems, world-class athletes, people like that. And one of the things he talks about is that to one of them, you can trace their success back to the amount of time that they invested developing themselves. And that in general, they don't get to what we would call the expert level. Whatever their field is, they don't get to the expert level until they have put in at least 10,000 hours. He even went back and looked at Mozart, because everybody goes, oh, Mozart was composing at age 6. And what he actually found out was that Mozart didn't get to doing original compositions until he was age 21. Everything that he created from age 6 to age 21 was reworkings of other people's work. Now, that might have been good, but it wasn't that original work. So the question is just where you're going to put in your 10,000 hours. Because it's available to you. The things that we admire in other people, when we look at someone like an Oprah, or we look at someone like Ariana Huffington, or we look at someone like Barack Obama, whomever, is that where are you going to put in your 10,000 hours? Because you just need to decide where you're going to put your 10,000 hours in, because that's where your investment is. And what you're doing is that you're building a platform within yourself. This is all intangible. You're building a platform within yourself for the God presence that's already in you to come out into expression. Now, is God already expressing through you? Absolutely. But what do you want? Do you want extraordinary, or do you want ordinary? Because if you want extraordinary, if you want to really give vent to the Spirit, you need to decide where you put your 10,000 hours. What are you spiritually? So the personal is the scene. The personal is what you can put your hands on and perceive with your 5 senses. It's your body, it's your conduct, it's your situation, right? But the impersonal is the unseen. This is spirit, mind, revelation. And it is your intention that translates the unseen into the seen. It makes the what of life become the who of life. Your intention. What is your intention? Because whatever your intention is, it is what brings what you cannot see and turns it into what you can see. It takes the what of life and turns it into the who of life. I hope you get that. That's powerful. The personal is what you can pick up with your 5 senses. That's who you are. Andrea says, who knows how many forms one soul has had? Yes, the forms will pass. The me should be how many forms one soul has had. I got it. Yes. The personal is what you can see. So this is the personal. This is Sherri in the shell of this African-American woman, this Afro textured hair, these features, right? This is the who, right? This is the personal. This changes. There was a time when this hair didn't look like this body didn't look like this body. The role that I play now as pastor was not a role that I was playing. I was playing the role of film producer and writer, right? This role changed. The who changes. But there was also a time when I was playing little girl or playing teenager or playing college student. The who changes many times over my lifetime, right? It's changing. And the problem is that if I identify with it, guess what? Sherri's had some good days and some bad days. Okay? Sherri has not had all good days. So this is changing. But what has changed less is the spirit. So though this form has shifted over time, the what has never changed. And it is in identifying with the what, which is the spirit, which is the divine part of myself and the divine part of you, that I'm advocating that you do. This whole series, the name of this series is Empower the Giant Within You. First thing you got to do to empower the giant within you is figure out who you are. If there's a giant within you, the only way for the giant to come out is for you to begin to identify with the giant. And I'm using the giant as to be synonymous with the Christ. The only way for the giant to have voice in your expression, to come out and be who you really are, is for you to identify with it. But first you got to know that it's there. First you got to start distinguishing between, wait, okay, this is personality. We got some limitation going on here. Got it. I'm identifying with the wrong side of my being. You want it out. It wants to get out. You want it to get out. It's why you keep trying to feed it too much food or feed it too much drink. Because it's calling to you and you don't know how to answer it. And so you go smoke another cigarette. It's calling to you and you don't know how to answer it, and so you go eat a cookie. It's always calling to you, and you keep trying to satisfy it in material ways. It's why you always need another cigarette. It's why you always need another cookie. It's why you always need another drink. Because it's calling you. It's calling your name. And if you don't know how to answer the call, then you try to satisfy it in ways that it can, you can't satisfy the spiritual with the material. It's just not how, that's why you can't, there are Mary would say it this way, Reverend Mary, there are no shortcuts to the kingdom. The kingdom is not a material kingdom. They keep telling you about streets paved with gold. That's a lie. Okay, pearly gates. She said this once, and I fell out. She said, after all the people that have been on the earth that have died, do you really think there's a pearl left in the pearly gates? And it's classic Mary, but it's so true. Listen how people talk about heaven. They talk about these material forms. And so the implication is, don't worry about your riches here because you're going to get riches later, but you still want riches. How does that work? How does that work? The kingdom is not material. The kingdom is spiritual, and there are no shortcuts to it, and you won't get to it through a material means. You will get to it through identifying with the spiritual side of your being. So the who versus the what. So we talked about this a little bit. The personal is the who, and that can be changed. But the impersonal is the what, and it is changeless. It eternally will be what it eternally has always been. It is the divinity of which Peter spoke. Thou art the Son of the living God. It does not apply just to Jesus. It applies to you too. And I use this picture of the blue rose because a rose by any other name is still a rose. You can call it whatever you want to. It's still whatever it is. You can make it blue, throw some dye on it. It's still a rose. So you can be whomever you're being. You could be a mass murderer. You could be the greatest philanthropist on the planet. Be whoever you want to be. It doesn't change the what. A spirit by any other name is still a spirit. You are still the Christ in expression. I have no idea if there are people in jail that are watching this, but guess what? You are still the Christ in expression. No mistake you have ever made has damaged who you are spiritually. Who you are spiritually can't be touched. It's changeless. It always is. It doesn't grow old. It doesn't grow old. It doesn't lose energy. Right? Who you are is, or so here, who I am is Sherri in this form, but what I am is spirit. And no lie I tell about myself can change that. No lie you tell about yourself can change that. Ray says, could a feeling of discontentment be considered the spirit calling? 100%, right? 100%. Andrea says, Rev, will you please describe the difference between spirit and soul in this instance, a triune? Sure. Okay. So when we talk about spirit, we talk about that intangible, inexhaustible, perfect form. It's formless, but perfection. It is inexhaustible. It is infinite. It has no beginning and it has no end. Soul, we talk about as like a tuning radar, and it tunes into the spirit, but it also has free choice to tune into the world. The soul we talk about as your mind, and your entire mind, your superconscious phase of mind, your conscious phase of mind, and your subconscious phase of mind. That those aspects of who you are, that's what we describe as your soul. And your soul is the translator. It's whatever the intention of the soul is. So the idea from spirit could be love, right? But how your soul translates love determines what it looks like in your body. It doesn't damage the idea, because the idea of love is perfect. Its whole is complete. It's unending. But how your soul thinks about love determines how it shows up in your expression. If you say plenty, poverty is just a misuse of the abundance idea. Someone took the abundance idea and formed it into lack. Because there's only abundance. There's no such thing as lack. There's only abundance. But you can misuse a God idea and create an error form, ERROR, an error form in your body. So I hope that answers your question. Let me know if it does not, and for sure ask me another question if it does. Okay, so how do you recognize your divine nature? So the first thing is that you gotta know the difference between the personal and the impersonal you. You've got to begin to examine your perfection, because there is perfection inside of you. Whenever you feel lack of any kind, it is because you have identified with the personal side of life. Whenever you feel lack of any kind, it is because you have identified with the personal side of life. When your divine nature calls to you from the depths of your being, you experience confusion and restlessness because you do not know how to answer. She had this paragraph, and I just loved it, and I'm going to share it with you. It's on page, because because the image was so powerful. But she talks about the spirit calling to you, and because you don't know how to answer it, because you don't know what it is that's calling to you, all you know is you're just unsatisfied. Oh, where is it? Okay, I'm not finding it immediately. But it was so powerful because she talks about, not knowing who you are, and the spirit, and the spirit always calls to you. The spirit is always calling your name. There is no point in expression where the spirit is not calling your name, seeking to put some idea through you, right? Because if God is changeless, so if God is ever calling you, God is always calling you. So the spirit is always looking for a way to pour itself through you. And if you don't dig the ditches, right? If you don't make the pathway for spirit to come through, then it's just a restlessness. And so we get involved in affairs, we get involved in reckless behavior, or it doesn't have to be necessarily something bad, but the point is that we keep trying to satisfy this call. We don't know what it is. We just know there's just an uncomfortableness that we cannot do anything about, that we don't know how to do anything about. And we don't necessarily know that it's spirit calling until it runs its course and we find ourselves in a corner, and then we say, God, help me out. And it's like, I've been calling you since forever. Since forever, ever. You just now hearing me? And it's like, well, I had to get in this corner so I could finally be quiet and listen. Oh, I really want to find this. All right. Well, anyway, it's so beautiful because she uses this analogy of the person with amnesia, and this is how most of us have spiritual amnesia. We've forgotten who we are. And if you think about someone with amnesia, that you'll have people that are trying to get them to remember who they are, and they'll say, well, don't you remember we used to go to this place, or someone will take them to a restaurant that they used to go and eat at, because they're trying to jog their memory, right? And it comes through to them in like flashes, and then maybe a complete thought or whatever. But over time, it starts to build back up until they finally have cognition. And with you, it's the same way. That what you are trying to do is that you're praying, you're meditating, you are essentially trying to get a flash of your divinity. You can see I am committed to finding this because it was so powerful the way that she said it. But what happens is that you get these flashes of your divinity, and they soothe you for just a little bit. So you get them, you go to church, and you get like this kind of flash of your divinity, like, oh yeah, rah, 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 I'm great. And then you go back to your world, and it's like the dark of night closes back in on you, and you go back to sleep. And that was the image I was trying to find. So I'm going to just move on now, because I've wasted a little bit of time. The second thing that you need in order to recognize your divine nature is you need to know you cannot make a mistake. You cannot make a mistake. Only the personal you can sin. Only the personal you can sin. I think that is powerful, because if you ask people who they are, somebody's going to tell you that they're a sinner. And somebody's going to tell you that they're a wretch. And this is what she says to this, and it's on page 9, and I love it because it's just powerful. What you are spiritually, what are you spiritually? If you accept some theological teachings on the subject, you will answer that you are a sinner, a lost soul. In so answering, you speak in the consciousness of the personal, the changing. You cannot say that the impersonal, the changeless, sins or becomes lost. The impersonal is the spiritual. It is of God and is identical to God. If God can sin, so can the spiritual you, but not otherwise. To become lost, you must find a retreat outside of God. But then God is everywhere evenly present. So in any form of identity, there is no place where you can stray and be lost to God. If God can be lost, then you can be lost, but under no other circumstances. What theology calls a lost soul is a soul that has lost sight of God's omnipresence. You can't be lost in omnipresence, because if you can, it's not omnipresence. In the personal, you have acted ignorantly, and the act of ignorance is the act of sin. In the impersonal, you have never acted ignorantly, never have sinned. In the personal, you have lost sight of God, but God never has lost sight of you. What is in the sight of God is not lost. That is fire. Watch how you answer, how you describe who you are. Watch how you answer, how you describe what you are. You are a spiritual being. If you say that you are a sinner, and all that sin is just making a mistake, if you call yourself a sinner, then all that you have done is identified with the personal side of your being. And guess what? There are limitations to identifying with just the personal side of your being. And if you want to be that person, go ahead and be that person. But please know the choice that you are making. Do not ignorantly make the choice. If it makes you feel better to call yourself a sinner, go right ahead. But know in your heart that you are divine, that you are made in the image likeness, and that all you are doing when you are calling yourself a sinner is lying about the truth of your being. The third thing you need to do is you need to know how to activate the impersonal you. See, your thoughts make your body, but the wrong thoughts persuade your body to misrepresent your spiritual nature. Every place where you are broke down, don't have what you want, you have been thinking thoughts that have persuaded your body to misrepresent your spiritual nature. Now, I feel like we talked about this, but this may have been in a sermon at a church. Our bodies are 70% water. 70% water, right? Maybe more. There's a Japanese scientist. Yes, we did. We talked about this last time. And he's made his transition, but he did experiments with water. And what he had people do was to hold a bottle of water, or a glass of water, and to practice feeling a specific emotion. And then he put the water underneath the microscope and looked at the crystallized patterns in the water. And those that held negative thought patterns, you saw these chaotic crystal patterns in the water. And those that held positive emotions, love and peace and joy, you saw organized patterns of crystals. When you consider the fact that our bodies are 70% water, what do the emotions that you hold create in your body? Your mind is so powerful. You shape the very cells of your body. And the beautiful thing is that if there's anything in your body that you want to change, you have the ability to change it simply by changing your thought about it. Now, changing your thought is not necessarily the easiest work that you can do, but it is absolutely doable because it's been done before. And this is the call that Jesus places on each of us, to change the way that you think. Marvin says, the Navajos believe that the world is holy. The Buddha said that all creation is spiritual, only part realizes it. Yep. Yep, that's it. Thank you. Constance says it on page 10. Um, This is what she says. A man who is in a condition of amnesia does not remember his name, his home, his purposes. Temporarily, he is not conscious of his identity. His mind gropes in a fog of forgetfulness. There is a stage of his disorder in which hints, probings do not help him. Mental oblivion has locked the man's consciousness upon itself. Spurred by the promptings of his submerged self, urged by the anxiety of eager friends, he struggles to remember who he is. Then someday comes a flicker, then a beam, and then the full light of recollection returns. The man has recovered consciousness of personal identity. You are the Son of God, but have not always acted the part. If you will live in as full accordance with your divine nature as your present state of preparation makes possible, you will be made aware of your true identity. As the victim of amnesia persists in recalling personal identity, so you must persist in recalling your spiritual identity. While you pray, read, meditate, practice spiritual truth, a flicker, then a beam, then the full light of restored consciousness will dawn, and you will know yourself. And in that knowing, the human estimate in all that it values and in all that it decries will be supplanted by the divine apprisement. Thou art my son. Today, this day, I have begotten thee. This day, you must know who you are. I want you to get impressed with the thoughts of God that are found in Scripture and quickened through your prayer and study and your meditation. Sometimes you may be in a situation and you don't know what to think. And it is at that time that you need to go to Scripture, that you need to pick up your Bible and find any verse and simply begin to read it. Because what you are doing is that you are impressing your mind. Your words leave a mark on your mind. The things that you read, the things that you let your eyes see, impress upon your subconscious nature. And the things that, that you continually suggest to it become your expression. Oh, this is huge. Number 4. Know that you are highly impressionable. Know that you are highly impressionable. I want you to get this. Your mind, and I'm speaking about your subconscious phase of mind, is powerless to resist the ideas that are persistently and faithfully offered it. Your mind, its subconscious phase of mind, is powerless to resist the ideas that are persistently and faithfully offered it. I feel like I want to say it one more time. Your mind is powerless to resist the ideas that are persistently and faithfully offered it. What do I mean? This is how you change your mind. You have got to persistently offer the same idea over and over and over and over again. And there's a period of time between when you first introduce the idea and the point of complete acceptance, where the mind is essentially building a receptivity to the idea that you're offering it. That period of time varies. Sometimes you get it in an instant. Other times it takes 10 years. But the mind will accept what you continually offer. I had this experience with Jordan, and one of the beautiful things about working with a baby is that you watch this process happen over and over again. And I've shared some of what I've gone through with feeding him, and one of the things that I fed him early on were mashed potatoes, and he loved them. They were buttery and rich and just wonderful. But you know, he eats 2 bites, and then that's it, right? So just making 1 potato of mashed potatoes is too much food for him inside of a week, right? And I have this thing where I'm very I don't like throwing food away, so I buy only what I need, and I'm very efficient that way. And I just could not bring myself to throw the potatoes away, and so I started eating what he wouldn't eat, right, or didn't eat, and that can only last for so long because mashed potatoes are not on my diet. They might be on his diet, but they're not on my diet. Anyway, strategy wasn't working. I was like, cool, we have to take mashed potatoes off the menu for a little bit. So it's probably been like a month, 2 months, and I bring mashed potatoes back. He won't eat them. I'm like, what? You love mashed potatoes. But what you see with babies is that their minds are always in the immediate, in that present moment. And if you want them to do something or continue doing something, then you've got to keep doing it. And so now I'm at this place where I've got to reintroduce mashed potatoes to him, a food that he at one point loved, right? So, but it's the same thing with your mind, because at some place in your life, you're a baby. At wherever you're introducing a new idea, it's just like a baby. And there's a point at which you are introducing the idea over and over and over again. Because what you're doing is that you are impressing upon the mind. And eventually, the mind will grab hold to the idea. Advertisers know this. They spend $540 billion annually globally because they know that if I can get my product in front of you, and they find different ways, if I can get my product in front of you, eventually you're going to accept the idea. And the only reason you wouldn't accept the idea is because there's simply another one that's being offered more persistently and more continually that you've accepted. And the thing about accepting an idea is that once you've accepted it, nothing is impossible to get rid of, but it is almost impossible to get an idea out of your mind. So once you've accepted that the way that I get rid of my headaches is through Excedrin, Tylenol don't stand a chance, because you accept it, you believe in it. So you are highly impressionable. You are highly, highly, highly impressionable. Your subconscious mind is powerless to refuse the things that are persistently and consistently offered to it, which is why every spiritual teaching, from the fundamentalist to the New Age spiritualist, will tell you to watch your mind. And whether they use fear or reason to get you to do it, the point is guard the gate of your mind. Marvin said that's why ads have catchy jingles. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. 100%. If there is an error in the expression, it has to be fixed in the impression. So you always want to focus on the impression. You are as enduring as God, but you must let Spirit impress this idea upon you. And the final thing that you need to recognize your divine nature is you need to know that nothing external to you has power over you. Nothing external to you has power over you. Nothing external to you has power over you. Everything you express, even the experience of someone oppressing you, must first be impressed in your mind. If your mind was a flower, your body would be the bud. If your mind was a flower, your body would be the bud. It basically is the register of everything that is going on in your mind. So the beginning of recognizing your divinity is accepting 100% responsibility for your life. The only way to get to be champion, the only way to get to be victor, is to claim 100% responsibility for your life. Your genuine success will be fostered by putting the personal self under the control of the impersonal self, and then proceeding with expression. Everything unfolds from the inside out. Everything unfolds from the inside out. And so in review, the 5 things that you must know in order to see yourself as you truly are is 1, know the difference between the personal and the impersonal you. All distress in your life is because you have identified with the personal side of life. Number 2, know that you cannot make a mistake. Only the personal you can make a mistake or sin. The impersonal you cannot. Number 3, know how to activate the impersonal you. You are the thinker that thinks the thought that makes the thing. Number 4, know that you are highly impressionable. Let God impress your mind with what you really are. And number 5, know that nothing external to you has power over you. You create your life, and any expression that does not please you can be uncreated. And so my call to action is simple. Take some time after this video to simply journal about the question, what are you? What are you? And then take the affirmations at the end of the chapter and record them on your smartphone and listen to them at least 10 times daily. Take those affirmations and just play them over and over and over again. And then leave a comment on this YouTube video with your results. Let me know how it works out for you. So any questions? Any questions? Yvonne says, so slavery was the fault of the oppressed. I'm so glad you asked that question that way. Fault keeps you in bondage. Taking responsibility, how do I say this? Accepting responsibility for your life does not clear somebody else of accepting responsibility for their behavior. So this is not taking responsibility off of anybody. You have a responsibility to love your neighbor as yourself. The law is love God, love your neighbor as yourself. You don't, oppressor, get to not do that. You get what I'm saying? You don't get to like not love God and love your neighbor as yourself. You're not excused from that simply because I take 100% responsibility for my life. What I am saying is that the responsibility is different from blame. Blame keeps you in a cycle. Blame keeps you in a cycle where you do not well, it keeps you in limitation. Accepting responsibility says, I can do something about this. I'm in this situation. I can do, the power is within me to do something about this. I may not know all the reasons and the ways that I agreed my way into this situation, but I can do something about this. So I want to make a huge distinction that fault is different from responsibility. Fault is 100% different from responsibility. Taking responsibility is, I don't care how it got here. I don't want it in my experience, and I'm going to change it. I have made a decision that this is no longer satisfactory for me. And I can get into the who's it's and the what's it's and all of that, but what I want is freedom. And I'm going to work towards it. I'm going to put my faith in what I want. And here's the other thing, you know, what you're trying to get to is hearing the voice of God in you. As long as your mind is full of blame and resentment and anger and all of that for what somebody else did, you can't hear the divine solution. Remember, your mind is the meeting place where you connect with God. And if it's crowded with what somebody did to you, how are you going to hear God? Where's God going to sit? So you're never forgiving someone for them. You're forgiving them for you. You're forgiving them for your overcoming. You want what the Spirit has for you, but you keep it from yourself. There is nothing that God, if God is blessing, God is always blessing. Because that would, if God stopped blessing, right, that would make God changing. And God has changed less. So that means that the blessings are perpetual, never ending. If your blessings have stopped, they stop because you stopped them. And the way to get them started again is to get the gunk out of your own mind out of the way. But I'm glad you asked that question just like that, because that's usually where everybody runs to. It's like, oh, so it's my fault that this happened. It's not what it's about. Events in and of themselves are neutral, quite honestly. Events have no meaning until you assign them meaning. But what does happen is that you have a response to it. And then your response to it determines what it becomes for you. You know, when you're looking at your past, this is one of the things I realized with dealing with therapy, and, you know, all any therapist is ever going to do, whether they assign you drugs or not, meaning medicine or not, is that all they're going to help you do is reframe your past. Because you can't go back and relive those moments. You can't go back and do anything about anything that has happened, because it's happened. The only thing that you can do is tell a new story about it. And every therapy, no matter which direction they come, whether they come to it with some bells or some chants or some whistles or with some drugs, is going to be think differently about your past. That's all that's going to happen. And they got all kind of techniques to get you there, because you got to get around your resistance. But at the end of the day, it is reframe, retell the story, tell it differently that you've been telling. That's the only thing that's going to be different. That's the only thing, and that's the only thing that they can help you do, because you can't go back and relive it. I can't go back and undo slavery. Slavery has happened. The only thing that I have power over is what I think about it right now, how I talk about it right now. All the things that have happened, the stuff with the little kid Ahmed, and then I saw that there was a little black girl that had created, she did some kind of science experiment that blew up in the lab, and she got a felony charge for it. And you can't undo any of that, because it's been done. The only thing you can do is tell a different story about it. Now, the question is, will you tell the story that empowers you, or will you tell the story that keeps the noose around your own neck? Marvin says, all of us are made of God stuff, and all of us can fall short. The personal side of us. Andrea says, my spirit is changeless, has never been hurt or damaged in any way, and that part of me is continually whispering to me to remember it, what I am, I got it. Yes. Yes, continually. Remember, God is changeless. So if God is ever calling your name, God is always calling your name. Always. The question is whether or not, what are you tuned in? How is your soul positioned? What are you listening for? Or are you stuffing it with cookies, smoking it away, drinking it away? You know, we judge people based on like whatever their vice is, but guess what? We all got something that we're using to try to satisfy the spiritual call on our lives. So if I eat cookies, is that any worse than somebody who drinks a drink? I don't know. Both of them are trying to do the same thing, satisfy the call of the spirit. Any questions? All right. Thank you guys for tonight. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody. Next week, some controversial stuff. Next week, step number 2, you are what you think. You are what you think. Step number 2, in this book, it starts on page 22. I don't actually know what it looks like in the PDF. But if you want the free PDF, you want to go to truthunity.net. truthunity.net. Thank you, everybody. I release you in the love and the light of God, and I just affirm that the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and so it is. Have an absolutely beautiful night, and I will see you guys next week. Take care.